It started, as these things often do, with a joke. We were hosting a dinner party, 8 people, for couples, all friends we'd known since college. The kind of people who remember your first car and your worst haircut. Laughter was flowing, the wine was breathing, and my wife, Eliza, was in rare form telling stories, tossing out zingers like she was auditioning for late-night television. And of course, she said, raising her glass, Drew here still thinks I'm only bad at directions, not decisions. Everyone laughed. Hard. I didn't. I smiled, sure. But I heard the tone underneath the punchline. That wasn't a playful jab. That was a scalpel disguised as sarcasm. You know how you can hear something 100 times, but the 101st hit's different? That night, it hit different. The kind of different that makes your stomach drop before your brain catches up. After the guests left and the dishwasher hummed to life, I asked, what did you mean by that? She didn't look up from her phone. It was a joke. Sounded like a confession. That got her attention. She glanced up, eyes narrowing just slightly. Don't start. I'm not starting. I'm asking. You're reading into things again, she said, standing and walking away like punctuation on a sentence she didn't finish. Thing is, I wasn't reading into anything. I was finally reading it right. That night, while she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself the question no husband ever wants to ask. What if she already left, emotionally, mentally, and I just didn't notice? I didn't know it then, but that dinner party? That was the hook. The quiet setup for the long con that was my marriage. And buddy, the punchline was coming fast. Eliza started working late. At first, it was subtle, an extra meeting here, a new client there. She's in marketing, so I figured, sure, deadlines, pitches, late-night calls with West Coast brands. I didn't question it. I trusted her. That's the dangerous part. Trust. It's not earned. It's inherited in marriage. You hand it over like your last match in a snowstorm and pray the other person doesn't strike it against your back. One night she came home at 11:42 p.m. I remember because I was microwaving leftover lasagna and considering if single serving meant legally or emotionally. She walked in, heels in hand, makeup faded, wearing a scarf I'd never seen before. Long day? I asked casually. She nodded, kissed me on the cheek like I was her elderly uncle, and went straight to the bathroom. Left her phone on the kitchen counter. Face down. Always face down. That was breadcrumb number 1. Number 2 came 2 days later. I opened the glove compartment in her car looking for napkins. Found a receipt from a restaurant we've never been to. 2 entrees. Bottle of wine. Dessert. Dated the same night she said she was eating at her desk. Now, I'm not Sherlock Holmes. I don't own a trench coat, and my magnifying glass is metaphorical. But I know how to count. And the math wasn't adding up. So I did something I swore I'd never do. I looked through her phone. Just one time. Just to prove myself wrong. Spoiler. I didn't. There was a message thread, buried, muted, under a contact named Aaron, work. But Aaron doesn't send you winking emojis or say, last night was worth the wrist face-blowing kiss. Nope. That was breadcrumb number 3, and it tasted like battery acid. I didn't confront her that night. Or the next. I wasn't ready. I wanted more. Because now, I wasn't a husband. I was a detective in his own house, trying to solve the case of the disappearing wife. And something told me the trail of breadcrumbs wasn't leading home. There's a moment, right after the truth punches you in the throat, when your instincts split in two. One part of you wants to scream, to flip the table and demand answers. The other part? It goes quiet. Starts collecting. That's the part one leaned into. I didn't ask Eliza about Aaron. I didn't ask about the scarf or the receipt or the wine. I just started noticing. I noticed how she stopped laughing at my jokes but chuckled too easily at her phone. I noticed how she changed her perfume, started saying, "I'm exhausted," like it was a spell to vanish into the bedroom alone. And then came the moment that sealed it. It was a Wednesday. She was in the shower, singing off-key, and her phone buzzed once on the counter. I glanced. Just instinct. It was a calendar reminder. Rendezvous clinking glasses. 7 p.m., the Carlton. Now, I'm not a genius, but last I checked, we didn't have any joint plans to clink glasses in a hotel bar midweek. I knew what I had to do. I drove to the Carlton, parked 2 blocks away, and waited. At 7:08, she walked in wearing the red dress she swore she never wore anymore. The same one she used to wear on our anniversaries. Back when we still had those. And he was there. I didn't know him, but I didn't need a dossier. The way she touched his arm, the way her face lit up like the 4th of July. Yeah, that was enough. That face used to be mine. I snapped a photo. Just one. Not out of pettiness. Out of clarity. Because when someone looks at a stranger the way they used to look at you, you need proof that you're not crazy. That you didn't imagine it all. I went home that night and opened a folder on my laptop. Labeled it simply, Exhibit A. Inside, I dropped the photo. No rage. No confrontation. Not yet. This wasn't revenge. This was preparation. Because if my marriage was a courtroom, I was going to walk in with evidence. And Eliza? She was about to be cross-examined. 3 days passed after the Carlton. 3 days where I acted like everything was fine, where I made coffee in the morning, answered emails, even laughed at a joke on the radio while sitting next to her in traffic. 3 days of pretending I hadn't seen her with him, hadn't watched her smile like she was finally free of the life I spent 10 years building with her. You know what that does to a man? It doesn't break him. Not yet. It stretches him. Like old rope. One fray at a time. By day 4, the silence inside me had turned into its own kind of noise. A low hum. Not anger. Not grief. Just pressure. Constant pressure. Eliza came home that evening looking relaxed, glowy even, like she'd just come back from a day spa. Her bag hit the counter with a satisfying thunk, and she let out a breath that sounded too content for someone who was allegedly exhausted from work. I picked up Ty, she said, holding up the white takeout bag. Figured we could have a cozy night in. Cozy. Cute word, really. I nodded. Smells good. It did. Smelled like basil and betrayal. We ate in silence. The kind of silence that should have been interrupted by laughter, or a remember that one time, or even a harmless complaint about traffic. But there was nothing. Just the sound of chewing and the distant hum of the refrigerator that suddenly sounded louder than ever. Midway through her third bite, she looked up. You okay? There it was. The question. That one pathetic olive branch she threw every so often when her guilt tried to rise to the surface like a bubble she didn't want popping in public. I kept my eyes on my plate. Why wouldn't I be? She shrugged. You've been quiet lately. I smiled. I'm thinking a lot. About what? I met her eyes for the first time in days. About us. She paused. Her fork froze midair. Is something wrong? I took my time wiping my mouth with the napkin. You tell me. And just like that, the light in her eyes flickered. She wasn't confused. She was calculating. I could see it. The way her fingers tightened around the fork. The way she tilted her head just a little too far to the left, like a dog trying to figure out if you're reaching for a treat or a leash. What's that supposed to mean? She asked. It means, I said carefully, I've been noticing things. You coming home late. You smelling like cologne that isn't mine. You smiling more at your phone than you ever do at me. She opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. And then there was the Carlton. Her face drained like I'd flipped a switch. Pale. Flat. Silent. I pushed my chair back, slowly, gently, and walked over to the kitchen counter, pulling out my phone. Opened the folder. Turned it toward her. The screen lit her face in cold, undeniable light. Her. Him. Red dress. Hand on his chest. Her laugh frozen mid-betrayal. She stared at it for 3 long seconds. 4. Then 5. And then she said the one thing I didn't expect. So. That one word. So. That wasn't a confession. That was a dare. I blinked. So. I repeated. She crossed her arms. You were spying on me? I was verifying a suspicion. She laughed once, short and bitter. God, you sound like a detective in a bad TV show. You sound like someone who just got caught. Her expression didn't change. No remorse. No apology. Just detachment. Like this conversation was a chore. Like it was beneath her. Fine, she said finally. Yes, I've been seeing someone. There it was. The confession. But not really. She said it like she was admitting to switching shampoos. Like she expected me to say, oh well, thanks for the update, and go back to folding laundry. For how long? I asked. She shrugged. A few months. A few. Like it was a season. Like this betrayal had a start and an end date. And if we just waited long enough, the leaves would turn and everything would be pretty again. Why? I asked. She hesitated, and for the first time that night, her voice cracked, just slightly. Because I felt invisible. I nodded slowly. And this was the cure? Sneaking around with someone who probably thinks Thai food and foreplay are personality traits. She winced. But only a little. You never look at me anymore, she said. Not really. You're always in your head. You overthink. You retreat. And you cheat, I replied, flat. We all have our coping mechanisms. She didn't have a comeback for that one. The room went quiet again. I took my phone back, locked the screen. Then I said the line I'd been rehearsing for 4 days. You're free to go, Eliza. Her eyes widened. What? I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to scream. I'm not even going to beg you to stay. But you need to pack a bag. Tonight. She stared at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. But we can work through this. No, I said. We really can't. And that's when it hit her. Not the cheating. Not the lying. The fact that I wasn't reacting the way she expected. I wasn't falling apart. I wasn't chasing. I was calm. Too calm. Because you know what's worse than a man who's angry? A man who's done. Eliza didn't move. She stood there like her feet had rooted into the hardwood. Her mouth was slightly open, like she had a list of things to say, but forgot which one to start with. A flicker of disbelief danced across her face, the kind that only shows up when the person you thought was predictable suddenly steps off script. You're serious, she said. I nodded. More serious than I've ever been. But we've been together for 10 years. And for the last few months, I said calmly, you've been elsewhere. I'm just finally catching up. She blinked. You're really just kicking me out? No. I'm giving you a head start. That one landed. I turned, walked to the closet, and pulled out the overnight bag she usually packed for work trips. I placed it on the bed like a silent suggestion. I'm not doing this, she snapped, crossing her arms. I won't let you throw away everything because of one mistake. One. I laughed, not bitterly, just tired. Let's not pretend this was a single misstep in an otherwise perfect waltz. You lied. Repeatedly. To my face. Every day. While looking me in the eye. She didn't argue that part. Probably because she couldn't. I told you, she said. Softer now. I felt invisible. No, I corrected. You felt bored. There's a difference. She sat on the edge of the bed, her posture collapsing under the weight of reality. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just finally stopped seeing her the way I wanted to. You're being cruel, she said. No, I replied. I'm being clear. I walked over to the dresser and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were copies of every photo, message, and hotel receipt I had quietly collected over the past 3 weeks. I handed it to her. What's this? She asked. Evidence. Just in case you ever decide to play the victim. She didn't open it. Just stared at the folder like it might bite her. You've been planning this, she whispered. I shrugged. You plan for storms. You don't wait for the roof to cave in. She stood abruptly, her voice rising. So that's it? After everything we've been through, you're just done? I was done, I said, the night you told someone else you missed them. That's when you ended it. I'm just finishing what you started. The silence after that felt like concrete. Heavy. Permanent. She didn't cry. I didn't beg. We just stood there, two strangers who used to share a last name and a Netflix account. Eventually, she picked up the overnight bag and moved toward the door. But just before leaving, she turned back one last time. I never thought you'd actually leave me. I didn't, I said. You just left me first. I'm finally returning the favor. Then she was gone. The door clicked shut with all the weight of a courtroom gavel. And just like that, I was alone in the house we bought together. The one with the scratch on the living room floor from when we tried to build an IKEA bookshelf and ended up turning it into a 3-hour marital endurance test. The house where she hung the framed prints and I pretended to care about throw pillow symmetry. The house that used to feel like ours. Now, it felt like a clean slate. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was heartbroken. Honestly, the grief had left the building weeks ago. What kept me up was the planning. See, here's the thing. When someone detonates your life, you don't rebuild in the same spot. You clear the wreckage. You dig deeper. And then, you make sure the next foundation is built earthquake-proof. The next morning, I started moving. Not physically yet. First came the bank accounts. I closed the joint one and transferred my funds into a new, solo account under my name only. Then came the will, the power of attorney, all the legal cords we'd tied together over the years like a couple convinced forever was a guarantee. Snip, snip. I called a lawyer. Booked a consult. Called a realtor, too. Didn't need the house. Didn't want the house. It was filled with echoes of, I'm just tired, and it was just dinner, and you're being paranoid. I wanted peace, not memories. By noon, the to-do list was 6 items deep, and I was already checking boxes. It felt surgical. Clean. I didn't stop to feel. Didn't give myself time to spiral. And then I found the box. It was tucked in the back of our bedroom closet, technically mine, though we both used it. A shoebox marked letters with a heart drawn on the lid. I hadn't seen it in years. I opened it. Inside were every birthday card, love note, and anniversary message Eliza ever gave me. Every, "I'm so lucky to have you," and "forever, always, no matter what." I read a few. They didn't sting. They didn't spark anything, either. They just sat there. Paper corpses of a marriage that had long since flatlined. So I closed the lid, walked out to the backyard fire pit, and lit a match. The flame caught fast. The paper curled and blackened, love poems crumbling into ash like promises no longer under warranty. I watched until the last note was gone, not because I'm a romantic, but because I needed to feel something burn that night, and it sure wasn't going to be me. By the time I walked back inside, something in me had shifted. Not broken, just solidified. I wasn't the man begging for answers anymore. I was the man drawing a line, the man planning his exit, the man who knew that the final laugh would be mine. The first message came at 2:13 a.m. A text, of course. Because when they can't look you in the eye anymore, they go for the glow-in-the-dark confession booth we call a phone. "I can't sleep. Are you okay?" I stared at it for a full minute. It felt more like a test than a question. Like she wasn't checking on me, she was checking if she still had access. I didn't answer. At 2:31 a.m., another one buzzed through. "I miss you. This isn't how I thought it would go." There it was. The first crack. You know what they never prepare you for? How quickly guilt turns into nostalgia when they realize the safety net's gone. Suddenly every fight becomes a rough patch, every lie a mistake, and every betrayal just a phase. By sunrise, she had moved from texting to calling. 3 missed calls by 6 a.m. By 7:15, she left a voicemail. I didn't play it. Not yet. Instead, I got dressed. Same as always. Coffee, cold rinse, navy button-down, routine, mechanical. But something in me had shifted. I wasn't wearing grief anymore. I was wearing distance. I finally played the voicemail on the way to work, windows down, wind cutting through the car like a clean break. "I know you're mad. I deserve that. But this silence is killing me. I just want to talk. Please. You don't have to say anything. Just let me hear your voice." It was a good performance. Tears, breathy pacing, the works. But here's the thing. If someone wanted to keep you, they wouldn't have handed you to someone else in the first place. You don't drop your favorite book for a trashy magazine and then act surprised when the pages stop turning. At lunch, I got an email. From her. Subject line: "I'm sorry." Inside? A letter. She laid it all out. The boredom, the emotional distance, the desire to feel alive again. She mentioned how he made her feel seen, how it wasn't supposed to happen, and how I deserved better. That part made me laugh. Out loud. In public. I deserved better? She was the one who ordered the steak and complained about the cow. Now she wanted to send back the consequences. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. No response to her. Not yet. That wasn't part of the plan. Because I had a plan now. See, most people think revenge is loud. Screaming, smashing plates, keying cars. Drama. Noise. But real revenge? It's quiet. It's methodical. It starts with making yourself untouchable. So that's what I did. I removed her from every account. Changed every password. Called the bank. Removed her name from the emergency contact list at work. Took her off my health insurance. Reassigned my benefits to no one. Because if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, she'd get nothing but a voicemail and a box of paperwork. That night, she showed up. I heard the knock at 9:12 p.m. I didn't answer. I watched from the hallway, silent, still. Her silhouette behind the frosted glass was familiar. Too familiar. She rang the bell. Waited. Then knocked again. "Elijah," she called through the door. "Please. I know you're in there." I stayed quiet. I wanted her to feel what I had felt. The wondering. The waiting. The crushing sense that the person you once shared a world with had vanished into thin air, on purpose. She waited 5 minutes. Knocked twice more. Then left. I watched her walk back to her car. Alone. Shoulders tight. Her steps uncertain. She looked back once. I didn't blink. The next morning, I sent my own message. No words. Just the photo. The one from the Carlton. Her. Him. Laughing. Intimate. Caught. Attached was a single sentence. Don't forget what you chose. No greeting. No closing. No explanation. She didn't reply right away. But 6 hours later, she did. That was a mistake. I wasn't thinking. I didn't mean to throw us away. I stared at the message and thought about how careful she had been when she packed her overnight bag. How deliberate her smile had looked in that hotel bar. How long she had gone without touching me, even in passing. Mistake? No. It was a decision. And the only thing she didn't plan for was me deciding back. I didn't reply. Because the message was already sent. Not the photo. The silence. The detachment. The clean removal of everything she used to occupy in my life. She'd feel it every time she tried to use a login and it failed. Every time she opened a drawer and found it empty. Every time her calls rang once, then went straight to voicemail. This wasn't revenge. This was reality. And the message was simple. I am no longer yours. It was Saturday morning when her sister showed up. Tessa, the family's PR rep. Always the peacemaker, always overdressed for casual conversations. She knocked with manicured confidence, holding a coffee cup in one hand and a smile in the other. Elijah, she beamed like this was a brunch invitation. Can we talk? I didn't respond immediately. I just looked at her through the screen door. Neutral. Still. Like I was observing a weather pattern that didn't concern me. She raised the coffee cup. It's a peace offering. Almond milk, no sugar, just how you like it. I opened the door, not because I needed the caffeine, but because I wanted to hear what damage control sounded like in real time. Come in, I said flatly. Shoes off. She slipped off her heels and stepped inside like a realtor walking through an open house. Glanced around. Noted the clean counters, the half-packed boxes in the hallway. You're really doing it, huh? She asked, setting the coffee on the counter. Doing what? Leaving. Erasing. Starting over. Interesting choice of verbs. She took a slow breath. She's not okay, Elijah. That makes two of us. No, Tessa said, shaking her head. You're okay. You're calm. Cold, maybe. But Eliza? She's unraveling. I leaned against the counter. Should have thought of that before she scheduled regular check-ins at the Carlton. She winced. I'm not defending her. Yes, you are. Tessa stared at me. She was trying to read my temperature, but I'd already removed the thermostat. She regrets it, she said finally. Regret's easy when consequences arrive. She didn't expect you to shut her out like this. Because she never thought I'd stop being convenient, I said. That was her real miscalculation. Tessa nodded slowly. She says it was emotional. That it didn't mean anything. Oh, fantastic, I said, my voice dry. The classic, meaningless emotional affair. That always plays well in court. She's not asking for anything. She just wants to talk. She had 6 years to talk, I said. Instead, she picked someone who probably doesn't even rinse his coffee mug. Tessa smirked at that, and for a second, I saw a crack in her corporate composure. Elijah, she said, softening her tone, I know this is brutal, but there's a lot of history here. Yes, I said, which makes what she did worse. Not better. She thought you were unhappy, too. I was. But I didn't solve it with a hotel key and a cocktail dress. Tessa fell quiet. We stood there for a beat in that thick, awful silence people reserve for hospitals and breakups. The kind that hangs in the air like fog, impossible to ignore, too heavy to breathe. She doesn't know who you are anymore, Tessa said finally. You've changed. I had to, I said. You don't walk away from betrayal as the same man. You evolve or you disappear. She looked around the room again, eyes landing on the small white box by the door. What's that? She asked. The wedding album, I said. It's hers. I figured I'd send it, but since you're here, I slid it across the counter. She doesn't want that, she said quickly. Good, I said. I don't either. Tessa picked it up carefully, like it might still be radioactive. You really aren't going back, are you? No. You don't even want closure? This, I said, gesturing to the quiet room around us, is closure. The absence. The echo. She studied me for a long moment, then set the coffee back on the counter untouched. She's going to try again, she said, stepping into her heels. I hope you know that. I expect it, I said. But the locks have changed. Outside, she hesitated on the porch. You were always the quiet one, she said. I used to think that meant soft. Quiet isn't soft, I said. It's loaded. She nodded once, then left. I stood in the doorway for a moment, staring at the spot where she'd been. A few minutes later, a text came through. From Eliza. Did she come by? No punctuation. Like she didn't even have the energy for a period anymore. I didn't answer. Because I'd already said everything without saying anything. That afternoon, I went to the storage unit I'd rented a week earlier. Tossed the wedding album inside, along with the anniversary box she gave me on year 3, the one filled with tiny, open envelopes. I never opened them. She always said that was my problem. I opened the one labeled open when you need to feel loved. Inside was a note in her handwriting. You're the safest place I've ever known. I smiled at the irony. Then I put the envelope back and walked out. Locked the unit. Tossed the key in the river on the way home. No ceremony. No tears. Just gravity. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Because for the first time in this whole mess, I realized it wasn't my job to carry her shame. It was hers. And the moment I stopped doing it, that was the moment I became free. The apology dinner was set like a movie scene. Eliza picked the restaurant, quiet, upscale, candlelight flickering across dark wood and polished silver. 2 glasses of Merlot sat sweating in front of empty chairs. I arrived 5 minutes late. Not to be rude. Just to remind her I was done being predictable. She stood when I walked in, all soft tones and hopeful eyes. Elijah, she said like my name was an old melody she forgot the lyrics to. I sat without hugging her. Thanks for coming. I'm curious, I replied, but not hopeful. She laughed nervously. Still sharp. Still observant. She ordered for both of us. My old favorite. Used to be thoughtful. Tonight it felt like strategy. We didn't speak much while we ate. She kept glancing at me, like I might crack open if she looked long enough. I didn't. She finally leaned forward, elbows on the table. I rehearsed what I'd say, she admitted. But now that you're here, none of it feels right. I sipped my wine. Try the truth. That's usually effective. Her face flushed. She looked down. It wasn't about him, she whispered. I didn't answer. It was about disappearing. Not knowing who I was anymore. So you tried on someone else for size? She flinched. I thought if I felt something, anything, it might wake me up. And did it? I asked. She looked at me, eyes glassy. No. It made me feel worse. Good, I said. Because betrayal should hurt. Even for the one committing it. She wiped a tear. I was hoping we could talk about starting fresh. I nodded slowly. We can talk about anything. She leaned forward, that hopeful glimmer reappearing. But nothing's restarting, I finished. Her face fell. You're serious. I'm free, I said. And you're rehearsing. What does that mean? It means you still think this is a performance. You think if you hit the right notes, I'll forget the whole song changed. She went quiet. Eliza, I said calmly, you didn't just cheat on me. You rehearsed your exit. All I did was open the curtain. She swallowed hard. So that's it. This, I said, gesturing to the candle between us, is the closing scene. You can order dessert if you want. But the credits are rolling. We left separately. No hug. No lingering stares. No encore. A week later, she showed up again. This time with a legal envelope in hand. Thick. Formal. She handed it to me without a word. I want this to be fair, she said. Don't worry, I replied. I already made sure it is. I'm not fighting you, she said. I'm not asking for anything. I know, I said. That's the part that actually stings. She looked at me, confused. You don't want to fix this, I said. You just don't want to lose gracefully. Elijah. I held up a hand. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm simply uninterested in rewinding. She stepped back. You've really changed. No, I said. I just stopped holding the door for someone who already walked out. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. That was the point. She left the envelope. I didn't open it that day. I had one more thing to do first. I went to the cabin, the one we used to visit every fall. Rustic. Quiet. Tucked into the woods like it was hiding from time. I hadn't been there since the year before she started pulling away. Back when things were still simple. Before late nights turned into cold shoulders and I'm tired became code for I'm gone. I brought a box with me. Just one. Inside were the final keepsakes, photos, notes, receipts, trinkets of a life that was no longer mine. I built a fire. Not out of rage. Out of clarity. I watched it burn. The way her laughter used to echo off these cabin walls? Gone. The way I used to sleep wrapped around her like a shield? Gone. The idea that we were forever? Ash. I didn't cry. Didn't flinch. I stood there until it all turned to smoke. Then I scattered the ashes in the river behind the cabin, the one we used to skip stones across. I skipped one. Then I turned and walked away. That night, I slept harder than I had in years. No ghosts. No wait. Just wind through the trees and the silence of closure. She never called again after that. She didn't have to. She knew. I'd taken the final bow. And the curtain was down.